When I first began to observe the depths of the human psyche, I noticed that life is not only measured in thoughts and emotions, but also in what I would call vibration, the subtle energy with which one approaches existence. You may call it presence or frequency, but its essence is unmistakable. Some individuals radiate vitality, while others seem burdened by shadows that weigh them down. A person of high vibration is not defined by wealth status or intellect alone. Rather, they live with an alignment between inner truth and outer action. Their habits, cultivated with awareness, elevate not only their own soul, but also the lives of those around them. These habits are not mystical secrets, but conscious choices practiced daily. Before we begin to explore these 13 habits, I must ask you to reflect. What vibration do you bring to your life? When you enter a room, do you leave others lighter, or do they feel the heaviness of your unspoken conflicts? Do you approach the day with openness, or are you consumed by defense and fear? These questions are not meant to condemn, but to awaken your awareness. The first habit of highly vibrational people is self-awareness. This may sound simple, but it is the cornerstone of everything that follows. Self-awareness means more than noticing your mood. It means having the courage to observe your thoughts, impulses, and actions without judgment, as if watching yourself from above. In this practice, you discover patterns: how you react when criticized, how you behave when praised, how you withdraw when afraid. To live without self-awareness is to remain asleep in one's own life, driven by unconscious forces like a leaf carried by the wind. But when you begin to notice, to see yourself clearly, you awaken to the possibility of choice. It is as if you hold a mirror not only to your face, but to your soul. I have seen in my patients that this awakening often begins with discomfort. They come troubled by dreams, anxieties, and conflicts. At first, they believe these problems are curses. But in truth, these disturbances are invitations, the psyche's way of saying, look deeper. Self-awareness is the willingness to answer that invitation. You may begin by observing your dreams, for they are the royal messages of the unconscious. You may journal your thoughts, speak with a trusted friend, or simply pause during the day and ask, what am I feeling right now? Why? Such small practices gradually cultivate the clarity that raises vibration. Imagine yourself as a vessel. If you are filled with unconscious conflicts, you vibrate with confusion. If you are aware, you vibrate with coherence. Those around you may not know why they feel calmer in your presence, but they will sense it. So, as we embark on this journey through the 13 habits, remember this. Self-awareness is not only the first step, but the key that unlocks the rest. Without it, every other habit remains superficial. With it, even the smallest act can become transformative. Now, I ask you to reflect personally. How do you practice self-awareness in your life? Do you avoid your inner voice, or do you dare to listen? If you feel inspired, share your experience in the comments. Tell me where in the world you are listening from and how you cultivate or struggle to cultivate self-awareness. In sharing, we create a collective reflection, a resonance of minds across nations. Let this be our beginning, the awakening to the vibrational self. If the first habit of self-awareness opens the door, the second habit, emotional responsibility, invites us to step through it. For what use is it to see ourselves clearly if we continue to blame others for the storms that rise within us? I have observed many lives weighed down by the refusal to take responsibility for one's emotions. Anger projected outward, sadness hidden behind accusations, fear disguised as judgment. The individual believes the world is the source of their turmoil, when in truth the storm originates within. Highly vibrational people live differently. They recognize that while they cannot control every event, they are responsible for how they respond. This is not a denying injustice or pain, but to reclaim the power to shape one's inner state. When insulted, they ask, why did this wound me so deeply? What in me resonates with this attack? When disappointed, they inquire, was it the other who failed me or my expectation that was unrealistic? This habit requires courage, for it demands that we cease blaming others for what lies unresolved within ourselves. But this is where transformation begins. To accept responsibility for one's emotions is to hold the key to inner freedom. In my analytic work, I often encounter patients whose suffering was prolonged because they could not admit their role in it. They insisted their unhappiness was caused entirely by spouse, parent, or circumstance. Only when they dared to ask, "What part of this belongs to me?" did healing begin. Let me be clear. Emotional responsibility is not the same as self-blame. Blame condemns, while responsibility empowers. To say, "I am responsible for my anger," is not to say, "I am worthless." It is to say, "I recognize this anger as mine, and therefore I can understand it, transform it, and free myself from its chains." Think of it this way. If you constantly hand your emotional state to others, you become their prisoner. If their approval makes you happy and their rejection makes you miserable, then you are like a puppet whose strings are pulled by external hands. But when you accept responsibility for your emotions, you reclaim the strings of your own soul. This shift in perspective raises your vibration profoundly. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond consciously. Instead of spreading blame, you spread understanding. Your presence becomes steady, like a tree rooted deeply in the earth, unshaken by passing storms. I ask you now, how often do you take responsibility for your emotions? Do you recognize when anger or sadness originates from within, or do you find yourself pointing outward? Reflect on this honestly. And if you feel comfortable, share in the comments one situation where you discovered that the true cause of your emotion was not outside but inside. Your story may help another person awaken to the same realization. Remember, emotional responsibility is not a burden but a liberation. In choosing it, you free yourself from the tyranny of others and step into the sovereignty of your own being. This is the second habit of highly vibrational people. They claim ownership of their inner world. And by doing so, they transform not only themselves but the atmosphere around them. Having spoken of self-awareness and emotional responsibility, let us now move to the third habit of highly vibrational individuals, living with purpose. It has been my observation that many people drift through life as if carried by an invisible current. They follow routines, obey external demands, and chase desires that are not truly their own. When I ask them why they live as they do, they answer with confusion. Because everyone does. Or because it was expected of me. This, I must tell you, is a tragedy of the soul. To live without purpose is to live without direction, like a ship wandering endlessly at sea. Highly vibrational people, however, awaken to the deeper question, what is the meaning of my life? They do not allow culture, family, or chance to fully dictate their path. Instead, they listen inwardly to what I have called the voice of the self, that central archetype of wholeness which guides each of us toward individuation, our unique unfolding. Living with purpose does not necessarily mean achieving greatness in the eyes of the world. It means aligning one's daily actions with a deeper sense of meaning. For one, this may be to create art. For another, to raise children with love. For yet another, to bring healing into communities. Purpose is personal, intimate, and sacred. Consider this. When you live without purpose, your energy scatters. You become tired, restless, and easily swayed by distractions. But when you live with purpose, even the smallest task becomes infused with vitality. Washing the dishes is no longer drudgery, for it serves the larger order you are building in your life. Speaking to a stranger is no longer meaningless, for you know it contributes to the vibration you wish to carry. In my work, I have often seen patients transform simply by recognizing that their suffering was, in fact, a signal of misalignment. Their depression was the psyche's way of saying, "You have strayed from your path." Their anxiety was a call to awaken. When they began to listen to the whisper of purpose, life regained color and their vibration rose. But let us not romanticize this habit. Living with purpose requires discipline. It asks that you say no to distractions, to fleeting pleasures, to the constant noise of society. It requires stillness, reflection, and often the courage to disappoint others. Yet, the reward is a life lived not in imitation, but in authenticity. I ask you now, what gives meaning to your existence? Not what others expect, but what your own soul demands. If you do not yet know, that is not failure. It is the beginning of the journey. Purpose is discovered step by step, through listening, reflection, and honest action. If you feel inspired, share in the comments. What do you believe is your purpose, or how are you searching for it? Speak of your journey. For in sharing, You may not only clarify your own path, but also inspire someone else across the world to begin theirs. Remember, a life with purpose vibrates differently. It resonates like a clear note in a symphony, distinct and unwavering. And this, my friends, is the third habit of those who elevate not only their own being, but the entire human collective. As we journey further into the habits of highly vibrational people, we arrive at one that is often misunderstood, yet deeply transformative: the habit of protecting one's energy through healthy boundaries. You see, every human being carries within them a finite amount of psychic energy. I have described this in my writings as libido, not limited merely to sexuality, but encompassing the vital force that animates our thoughts, emotions, and actions. To live unconsciously is to squander this energy, scattering it through endless obligations, toxic relationships, and pursuits that do not nourish the soul. Highly vibrational people understand this truth. To protect their energy is to protect their very essence. They are not selfish in doing so. Rather, they are wise. Just as a lamp cannot shine if its oil is drained, the psyche cannot radiate light if its energy is consumed by chaos and imbalance. Boundaries then become a sacred practice. To set a boundary is to declare, "This is where I end and where you begin. I honor you, but I must also honor myself." It is to recognize that one cannot carry the burdens of the entire world without first ensuring that one's own vessel remains intact. Many struggle with this habit, for they fear that saying no is unkind or unloving. But I tell you, to say yes when your soul demands no is the greatest betrayal of self. The consequence is resentment, exhaustion, and disconnection from one's true vibration. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates. They allow love and connection to flow freely, but they also protect against exploitation and harm. In my work, I have seen countless individuals lose themselves because they gave away their energy indiscriminately. They lived in constant people-pleasing, hoping for approval, terrified of rejection. Yet, when they learned to set boundaries, their posture changed. They stood taller. Their eyes grew clearer. Their relationships, though fewer, became deeper and more authentic. Protecting energy also requires discernment in what one consumes. Not only food and drink, but also information, environments, and conversations. Highly vibrational people are intentional about what they allow into their minds. They do not indulge endlessly in gossip, violence, or cynicism, for they know these diminish their frequency. Instead, they seek spaces, ideas, and people that nourish their inner growth. I ask you now, where do you allow your energy to be drained unnecessarily? Perhaps it is a relationship that no longer serves growth. Perhaps it is the endless scroll of distractions that leaves you empty. Reflect honestly. And if you feel called, share in the comments. What boundary do you most need to set in your life? In naming it, you may already begin the act of reclaiming your energy. Remember this truth. Protecting your energy is not isolation. It is preservation. A river that overflows without boundaries becomes a flood that destroys. A river guided by its banks becomes a source of life. So it is with your soul. This is the fourth habit of highly vibrational people. They guard their energy as sacred, knowing it is the foundation of all they bring into the world. Among the most profound habits of highly vibrational people is the ability to live in gratitude and presence. These qualities are not mere positive thinking nor shallow affirmations. They are states of consciousness that transform the very fabric of one's psyche. Gratitude is a recognition that life, even in its struggles, is abundant with meaning. When we cultivate gratitude, we shift from perceiving ourselves as victims of circumstance to becoming participants in the unfolding of life's mystery. Each breath, each encounter, each sunrise becomes a gift rather than a given. In my work, I often observed how individuals trapped in despair overlook the small treasures of daily existence. They long for extraordinary breakthroughs, yet ignore the quiet miracles, the warmth of friendship, the beauty of a tree swaying in the wind, the joy of laughter. Highly vibrational people, however, notice these things. They are not blinded by the pursuit of more. They are illuminated by the enough that already exists. Presence, closely tied to gratitude, is the practice of inhabiting this moment fully. The human mind, if left unchecked, constantly wanders into the regrets of the past or anxieties of the future. This restless wandering steals energy and and clouds the soul. But when we anchor ourselves in presence, we rediscover peace. To be present is to listen without the urgency to respond, to taste food with reverence rather than distraction, to walk in nature not as one rushing to a destination, but as one who allows the world to reveal itself step by step. It is in presence that the psyche reconnects with the eternal. Highly vibrational people make gratitude and presence daily practices. Some keep journals, writing down 3 things they are thankful for each morning. Others begin their day with silence, allowing the breath to guide them back to the now. There is no single ritual required, only the conscious choice to notice, to appreciate, and to be. Gratitude also has the power to reframe suffering. Even in moments of difficulty, one can ask, what lesson is hidden here? What strength am I being invited to develop? This shift does not deny pain, but transforms into wisdom. And when wisdom emerges, vibration rises. I invite you now to reflect. What is one thing in your life today that you may have overlooked, but for which you can feel genuine gratitude? It may be small, a smile, a memory, a meal, a safe place to rest. Share in the comments, if you wish, not as a performance, but as a practice. For when you name gratitude, you strengthen its presence in your heart. In this way, gratitude and presence become not fleeting emotions, but enduring states of being. They align us with the flow of life, allowing us to experience joy even amidst uncertainty. This is the 5th habit of highly vibrational people: to live in gratitude and to dwell in presence, moment by moment. To speak of vibration without acknowledging the shadow would be to paint only half of the human picture. Many believe that to be highly vibrational means to always shine, to radiate joy, to avoid negativity. But I tell you, such avoidance is not light but illusion. The truest light emerges only when we are willing to descend into our own depths, to confront what we fear, deny, or reject within ourselves. This is the practice of shadow work, the courageous act of self-reflection. Every individual carries a shadow, composed of aspects of the self that have been suppressed or hidden. Perhaps it is anger never expressed, wounds never healed, desires never acknowledged. These elements, when ignored, do not vanish. They live beneath consciousness, influencing behavior, distorting relationships, and draining energy. Highly vibrational people are not those who escape the shadow, but those who face it. They dare to ask uncomfortable questions. What part of myself am I unwilling to see? Where am I projecting my wounds onto others? What truths am I hiding even from myself? By asking, they loosen the grip of repression and invite integration. I have often said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is not a punishment, but a liberation. When you bring awareness to the shadow, you reclaim the energy that was trapped within it. That energy can then be transformed into creativity, compassion, and wisdom. Self-reflection does not require grand rituals. It begins with honesty. Perhaps you notice irritation in a conversation. Instead of blaming the other, you pause and ask, what wound in me is being touched? Or you may feel envy. Instead of dismissing it, you inquire, what unfulfilled potential does this envy reveal within me? Each question is a lantern, illuminating corridors of the psyche that were once dark. Highly vibrational people also practice forgiveness, not as a dismissal of harm, but as a release of the chains binding them to resentment. Forgiveness often emerges through shadow work, when one sees that much of the pain inflicted by others comes from their own unconscious wounds. This insight transforms bitterness into compassion without denying accountability. If you wish to grow vibrationally, begin by sitting quietly each day, even for a few minutes, and observing your thoughts without judgment. Notice the patterns that arise: anger, doubt, longing. Write them down. This simple act of witnessing begins the integration process. I ask you now, what is one shadow aspect you have recently encountered in yourself? Perhaps impatience, fear, or self-criticism. Consider sharing it in the comments, not as confession, but as connection. For when we acknowledge our shadows, we remind one another that humanity is shared and healing is possible. The 6th habit, then, is not about perfection, but about wholeness. To live vibrationally is to embrace both the light and the dark within, weaving them together into a more complete, authentic self. One of the most misunderstood aspects of a highly vibrational life is the importance of boundaries. Many equate kindness with endless availability, imagining that to be spiritual or evolved means to say yes to everyone and everything. Yet this is not love. It is self-abandonment. True love, for oneself or others, requires clarity, and clarity requires boundaries. Highly vibrational people understand that their energy is sacred. It cannot be scattered endlessly without consequence. Just as the body weakens when deprived of rest, so too does the psyche weaken when continually drained by toxic relationships, relentless demands, or environments that suffocate growth. Boundaries are not walls that isolate. They are doors that discern. They allow what nurtures to enter and prevent what harms from taking root. In my work, I observe countless individuals suffering not because of external events alone, but because they allow their energy to be consumed by what did not serve their inner growth. To practice this habit, one must first learn to say no, not with anger, but with firmness. No is an act of self-preservation and often of truth. It acknowledges that you are finite, that your time and heart cannot be given indiscriminately. Saying no does not make you unkind. It makes you authentic. Equally important is the protection of energy. Just as we shield our bodies from harsh climates, we must shield our psyches from environments and influences that poison the spirit. This may mean limiting exposure to constant negativity, whether in media, social circles, or even within family. Protection is not withdrawal from the world. It is the wise management of one's resources, so that when you give from fullness, not depletion. Highly vibrational people cultivate rituals of protection, spending time in nature, practicing meditation, cleansing their environments, or simply pausing to breathe deeply when chaos arises. These habits are not superstitions but psychological anchors. They remind the mind and soul that safety is possible, even amid turmoil. Boundaries also honor the individuality of others. When you respect your own limits, you learn to respect theirs. This reciprocity builds healthier, more balanced relationships, where each person gives not from compulsion, but from freedom. I invite you to reflect. Where in your life do you need to establish clearer boundaries? Is there a relationship, a habit, or even an internal belief that continually drains your energy? Naming it is a first step. If you feel moved, share this in the comments, not as exposure, but as empowerment. For in speaking, we strengthen our resolve. The seventh habit, then, is the cultivation of boundaries and energy protection. It is an act of love, not only for oneself, but for the collective. For when your energy is preserved, you shine more brightly, and your light becomes a gift to all. To remain highly vibrational, one must nurture spirit curiosity, a willingness to learn, unlearn, and relearn throughout the course of life. For the psyche is never static. It evolves as long as we allow it to be in dialogue with the mysteries of existence. I have often said that the unconscious speaks in symbols, and symbols are never exhausted in meaning. Similarly, life itself is a vast, symbolic text waiting to be read anew each day. Highly vibrational people practice the habit of lifelong learning, not because they seek credentials or recognition, but because they recognize that stagnation is the enemy of vitality. Curiosity keeps the soul alive. It asks, what lies beyond what I think I already know? What perspective might another culture, another discipline, or another person reveal to me? This openness dismantles arrogance and replaces it with humility. A humble mind is a fertile mind, receptive to wisdom in its many disguises. Consider the childlike wonder that asks why the sky shifts in color, or why a flower turns toward the sun. Most adults dismiss such questions as trivial. Yet, highly vibrational people preserve this innocence. They understand that wonder itself is nourishment for psyche. It prevents the heart from becoming rigid and the spirit from becoming dull. Lifelong learning need not always come from books, though books are indeed treasures. It emerges also from conversations, travels, mistakes, and even silence. A single encounter with a stranger may hold more wisdom than a year of formal study, if one listens deeply. To cultivate this habit, one must abandon the illusion of mastery. The moment we believe we know enough, we close the door to growth. Highly vibrational people, instead, live as eternal students, finding teachers in every experience. This does not diminish their authority. It expands it, for their authority is rooted in openness, not in pride. There is also courage in curiosity, for to ask new questions often means to leave behind comfortable answers. It may mean challenging long-held beliefs or stepping into unfamiliar paths. Yet it is through such courage that evolution takes place, both individually and collectively. I invite you now to reflect. What is something new you have learned recently, perhaps even by accident? And more importantly, how did it shift your perspective on life? Share this in the comments, for when we exchange insights, we weave a tapestry of collective wisdom that uplifts us all. The eighth habit, then, is the practice of lifelong learning and curiosity. To remain vibrant, one must remain a seeker, not chasing endless novelty, but embracing the infinite layers of meaning embedded in existence. For life is not to be conquered, it is to be explored with an open heart and a questioning mind. There exists a truth often forgotten in the modern pursuit of self-fulfillment, that the soul does not thrive in isolation. A life of high vibration cannot be achieved merely by tending to one's own garden. It expands when we extend our presence and energy in service to others. Highly vibrational people understand that contribution is not about grand gestures or heroic sacrifices. Rather, it is about the quiet consistency of compassion, the willingness to see another's suffering and to respond with presence, even in small ways. A kind word, a moment of listening, an act of generosity can ripple far beyond what the conscious mind imagines. In my own work, I witness how the psyche heals not only through introspection, but also through connection. Many who struggle with emptiness found meaning when they shifted from asking, "What do I lack?" to "What can I give?" Service transforms the focus from scarcity to abundance, from self-absorption to shared humanity. Compassionate service also has a profound psychological effect. When we contribute to others, we dissolve the illusion of separateness. We come to realize that our joys and sorrows are intertwined. Helping another does not diminish us. It enlarges us. It reminds the psyche of its place within collective, a truth essential for vibrational growth. But let me be clear. True service arises from authenticity, not obligation. To give from guilt or compulsion depletes energy. To give from overflow enriches both giver and receiver. Highly vibrational people therefore cultivate their own well-being first, ensuring their service springs from wholeness, not emptiness. Consider the many forms this habit can take. For some, it is volunteering time to a cause. For others, it is mentoring, sharing wisdom with those who walk earlier steps on the path. For others still, it is art, creativity, or even the quiet offering of patience in daily life. Service wears many faces, but all emerge in the same root: love. This is also a habit of alignment. When we act with compassion, we attune ourselves to a universal rhythm. Life itself is a constant exchange of giving and receiving. The sun gives light, the earth gives food, the body gives breath. To serve is to participate consciously in this eternal dance. I invite you to reflect. What is one way, however small, you can offer service this week? Perhaps to a friend, a stranger, or even to the natural world that sustains you. Share in the comments if you feel inspired, not for praise, but to encourage others to see that service is possible in every life, in every circumstance. The ninth habit, then, is compassionate service and contribution. It is a realization that your vibration is not only for you, it radiates outward, touching lives you may never know. In this way, service becomes not only an action, but a legacy. At the heart of a vibrational life lies a question that echoes through the corridors of the psyche. Why am I here? To live without asking this question is to drift like a vessel without a compass. But to face it and to live in alignment with its answer is to awaken to the deepest source of vitality. Highly vibrational people cultivate the habit of living in alignment with purpose and higher meaning. They do not wander aimlessly from one distraction to another. Instead, they orient their choices, their relationships, and their energy around a central axis of meaning that sustains their spirit. Purpose does not always reveal itself in dramatic visions or sudden revelations. More often, it whispers. It arises in moments when you feel deeply alive, when your actions align with your values, when your talents serve not only yourself, but also the greater whole. It may be teaching, healing, creating, leading, or simply loving with depth and integrity. Whatever form it takes, purpose transforms ordinary life into sacred practice. I have seen how the absence of purpose leaves the psyche vulnerable to despair. Without meaning, even wealth and success feel hollow. With meaning, even hardship can be endured with dignity. For purpose does not remove suffering, but it gives suffering context. And within context, suffering becomes bearable, even transformative. To cultivate this habit, one must listen inwardly. Ask yourself, what brings me alive? What values guide me when I am most authentic? How can I contribute to something larger than myself? Write these reflections, meditate upon them. Let them shape the way you live. Highly vibrational people revisit these questions continually, adjusting as life unfolds, for purpose is not fixed. It evolves as the soul matures. Living in alignment with higher meaning also requires courage. It may demand breaking from the expectations of society or even family. It may ask you to step into uncertainty, to follow paths not yet marked. But this courage is rewarded, for the psyche flourishes when it walks a path it was meant to walk, not the one imposed by others. I invite you, as we close this exploration of habits, to consider what sense of purpose animates your life today. And if it feels unclear, what small step could you take to discover it? Share this in the comments, not as a declaration, but as an offering of reflection. Your words may inspire another who is seeking their own compass. The 10th habit, then, is to live in alignment with purpose and higher meaning. For when your life resonates with your deepest truths, your vibration becomes not only personal but universal. You shine not as an isolated spark, but as part of the great constellation of human consciousness. And in that shining, you fulfill the very reason you were born. When I speak of vibration, I am not referring to something mystical or distant. I am speaking of the quality of your inner life, the way you think, feel, act, and connect. To live a high vibration is to live in harmony with your deepest truths, and this harmony is cultivated through habits. Here, I will share with you 13 such habits, practices that can transform not only your inner world, but also the way you walk through life. The first is self-awareness and inner observation. Highly vibrational people turn inward, observing their thoughts and emotions with honesty. They become students of their own psyche, seeing patterns not as burdens, but as opportunities for growth. The second is authentic expression. To be vibrationally alive is to live without masks, without the burden of pretending. Authentic people honor their truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. The third is the cultivation of inner stillness. In a world filled with noise, they create spaces of silence through meditation, nature, or simple solitude to reconnect with their deeper self. The fourth is the practice of conscious relationships. Highly vibrational people nurture connections that are genuine, respectful, and reciprocal. They release bonds built on dependency or toxicity, choosing relationships that uplift and align with growth. The fifth is the habit of gratitude and presence. They dwell in the moment, finding joy in what already exists, seeing life not as scarcity but as abundance. Gratitude transforms their vision, and presence anchors their spirit. The sixth is shadow work and self-reflection. They dare to face the darkness within, acknowledging fears, wounds, and desires hidden from view. In doing so, they reclaim lost energy and move toward wholeness. The seventh is boundaries and energy protection. They know their energy is sacred, and they guard it wisely. Saying no becomes an act of love, and choosing where to give becomes an act of strength. The eighth is lifelong learning and curiosity. Vibrational people remain students of life. They question, explore, and embrace wonder. They never assume mastery, but live in humility before the vastness of existence. The ninth is compassionate service and contribution. They recognize that life is not fulfilled in isolation, but in connection. Their energy expands when they give authentically, serving not from obligation, but from love. The 10th is alignment with purpose and higher meaning. They orient their lives around what brings depth and significance, allowing their actions to reflect their deepest values. Purpose gives context to suffering and joy alike, transforming life into a sacred journey. The 11th is embodiment of joy and creativity. They see creativity not as luxury, but as necessity, a force that renews and heals. Joy is not avoidance of pain, but celebration of life's mystery. The 12th is resilience and adaptability. Vibrational people face challenges without collapsing into despair. They bend without breaking, learning from adversity and transforming struggle into wisdom. Finally, the 13th is integration of spirit and matter. They do not divide life into sacred and ordinary. They find the sacred in the ordinary. Eating, walking, speaking, all become acts of alignment when done with awareness. I ask you now, which of these habits resonates most deeply with your own journey? And how might you begin to embody it in your daily life? Share your reflections in the comments. And tell me also where in the world you are listening from. For though our paths are individual, our collective reflection strengthens us all. The highly vibrational life is not distant or reserved for the few. It is available to anyone willing to live consciously, courageously, and compassionately. These 13 habits are not commandments, but invitations. Accept them, practice them, and you will find that your vibration rises, not only for yourself, but for all who share in the light you carry.